A very dangerous weather pattern is developing across the United States, which is about to bring even more record-breaking high temperatures in addition to even more severe weather, including damaging winds, large hail, and the potential for a few tornadoes. But there is some good news because a big cool down is expected later this week, and we are going to give you all the details about that in this video. So, in today's forecast, we are going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days. And we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And overall, things have been pretty nice over the last few days. We haven't had any crazy significant severe weather, but we did end up having a little bit of isolated severe weather across the Midwest and the Ohio Valley yesterday. But really, the big story is what is ongoing in the northern plains. We have had a big area of severe weather ongoing over the last 12 hours, with significant damaging winds that rolled through areas like Grand Forks, North Dakota last night, and many other select locations in the Dakotas, and we are expecting another significant round of severe weather today, tomorrow, and perhaps even into Tuesday in the central and northern plains and back into the Midwest, where significant severe weather including damaging winds, very large hail, and even a few tornadoes are going to be a possibility. And we are going to be talking all about this here in just a moment. Now, our weather pattern continues to break tons of records across the United States, with daily record-breaking high temperatures being broken. Areas from the Northeast, even back into areas like Florida, have been dealing with this, and we are expecting that this weather pattern will continue for the next few days before some relief comes in. So, let's talk more about that here with our mid-level flow. Right now, our high-pressure system is sitting across the southern plains and the southeast. This is continuing to trap heat and dry air, and that should continue for the next few days. Back over on the west coast, you'll notice this big dip in our jet stream and mid-level flow. This is basically helping to aid troughing and also helping to basically use the moisture that's coming out of the Gulf and circling this high-pressure system to be able to create a potential for severe weather, which is something we are going to be watching for over the next few days. But eventually, as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, notice how that high-pressure system will move further to the west. It's also going to shrink in size a little bit, and this will help to basically allow for northwesterly flow to come into play across the Midwest and as well as the Northeast. This will actually help to limit our severe weather as we go into the very end of July and even into the beginning of August. I think severe weather is going to wind down a bit, but eventually, as we go into early August, we are expecting our jet stream to continue to stay further down to the south and our mid-level flow. This is going to kind of weaken things quite a bit in our mid and upper level flow, which will essentially allow for colder weather to usher out of Canada. So, we are expecting some below average temperatures even from the northern plains all the way back into the Northeast during the first week of August, which does mean that relief is on the way. And we'll talk more about what that exactly means in just a moment. And then beyond this, things become a lot more uncertain. But I do think we're going to start to see another active weather pattern ramp up as we go into the later half of that first week of August. As we've alluded to, we are expecting a big heat wave to continue for the next few days. The National Weather Service has a slew of watches and warnings and advisories in effect right now. Any of these purple areas, those are extreme heat warnings, which does include the East Coast, also across the central and northern plains, a little bit of the Midwest as well. We also have extreme heat watches in effect for Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, which, by the way, Florida hardly ever sees these. That is because temperatures could be near 0 degrees over the next couple of days, which is very rare for Florida. And then heat advisories anywhere in the orange, which goes all the way from southern New England all the way through the Great Plains and the Ohio Valley and also through the southeast. So over the next few days, we are expecting above average and even record-breaking high temperatures to continue across the United States. This what it looks like on Monday. We have a huge pocket of above average temperatures that'll be sitting from the Rockies all the way back through the Great Lakes. But by the middle of the week, notice how that warm air starts to shift further down to the south, and we got some cold air that's going to be coming out of Canada by Wednesday and Thursday, so relief is on the way. If you are in the northern plains, the Midwest, even back over near Kansas City, perhaps even northern Oklahoma, we're going to start to see some below average temperatures make their way back into the United States for the very end of July and the beginning of August. So some really good news on the horizon if you're looking forward to colder weather. Same thing for those in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic by Friday and Saturday. And then eventually by the time we go into the following week, so first full week of August, we'll probably start to see the heat return again. But the good news is that relief is on the way. And before we talk about exactly how warm and cold it'll be over the next 7 days, I need to tell you more about the sponsor of today's video. Before we get too far into today's forecast, Cheese Kurt has told me that I have to tell you guys about the best thing in the world, Jack's Premium Pet Treats. Pets love all natural handmade treats without all the fillers and extra garbage. And that's exactly what Jack's Premium is. From treats and supplements to food toppers and more, anything that your pet may need, they have. But don't just take my word for it. Check out what me and Riley's pets have to think about these amazing treats. Cheese Curt's favorite treat is the baked chicken, and Riley's dogs love the chicken jerky and blueberry biscuits. And another thing that Jack's Premium caters to is food sensitivities. For example, Riley's cat Oreo has sensitivity to many different proteins and can only eat rabbit and salmon, which Jack's Premium has in its truest forms. And if your pets want a more classic treat, they also have traditional oven-baked treats, which are perfect, and your pets will love. Best of all, if you go over to jackspremium.com or click the top link in the description below and use code VELOCITY, you will get 20% off on your first purchase. So, what are you waiting for? Get the treats that your pets deserve and get Jack's Premium today. Now, back to the forecast. Now, in terms of the actual temperatures, we are expecting low 100s over the next few days. This is what it looks like tomorrow. We'll have 100 sitting anywhere from Omaha to Nebraska all the way back through Dallas-Fort Worth. Could even be near 110 in Omaha tomorrow. And on top of that, look at this in the southeast. This is a pocket of very high temperatures, and these will almost undoubtedly shatter daily records. Even in some cases, these could be the highest temperatures we've ever observed in some of these locations. Near Jacksonville, Florida, it may be near 107 degrees on Monday. Savannah, Georgia, near 106. Tuesday, that hot weather continues in those same exact areas. Record-breaking high temperatures are likely also in Tuesday. Luckily though, by Wednesday and Thursday, a lot of this heat starts to simmer down a little bit. Low to Chicago and also back into Wisconsin down into the 70s. Beautiful weather there. Dallas, Fort Worth, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, all in the 100 still. Could be near 110 in Dallas-Fort Worth on Friday. And then eventually by the weekend and early next week, that heat will build again in the Great Plains. But again, a lot of relief for those in the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, and the Midwest. And the feel-like temperatures will not be any joke either. We are expecting temperatures to feel in the 100s for most areas in the Midwest, back into the Southern Plains and the Southeast today. Tomorrow is not really going to be any different of a story. It'll actually be worse if you're back over in Iowa, Wisconsin, even back over into Nebraska. Most areas will be near 110 degrees for a feel-like temperature, and then by Tuesday we're expecting basically the same thing across the Mississippi River Valley. Wednesday, Thursday should be a little bit different though. As that cold air starts to siphon out of Canada, we should start to see things cool down across the Midwest. We might even have some areas feeling like the 60s back over near Chicago and also back near Milwaukee. Same thing for Thursday and Friday. We're expecting most of the heat to kind of get trapped back over here in the southern tier of the United States. So things will improve again if you're back over in the Central Plains, Ohio Valley, and across the Northern Plains for the very tail end of this week, which means if you have any outdoor activities, you might even need a light jacket in some of these spots. Now, let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days. And we'll begin with today, which is Sunday. And we have a slight risk of severe weather in place, which does include Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Large marginal threat for Montana back into Iowa and another one back over in the mid-Atlantic. Now today could actually be a bit more significant than what it already shows here on the Storm Prediction Sea Center's outlook. But right now, our main concern will be damaging winds, mainly from the Twin Cities back towards Duth. Large hail is also a possibility, especially out of the initial storms that fire off later this afternoon. Might even see some very large hail. Wouldn't rule out a storm producing hail larger than the size of 2 in diameter. There's also a large 2% tornado risk in place right now, but I would not be surprised if a 5% tornado risk was introduced in a future outlook, including areas just outside of the Twin Cities back into Duth, where I do think a few tornadoes are possible today. But the biggest problem with today's setup is not necessarily the wind shear, but it's going to be storm mode. I think a lot of the storms that fire off today will actually begin multi-ellular, which basically means that we will probably see multiple storms kind of cluster together. which would in nature limit the tornado risk. So, I'm not super sold on today being a big tornado day, but it's definitely something that we'll be keeping an eye on, and if things do take a turn for the worse later today, we might be live on this channel. So, make sure you're subscribed down below and click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live. And then, as we go into Monday, the threat of severe weather will continue across the northern plains and the Midwest, where the Storm Prediction Center has another slight risk of severe weather in place, which does include eastern South Dakota, southwest Minnesota, and northwest Iowa, where there will be a threat at least of damaging winds and also some large hail. But there is a potential again for a few tornadoes. Right now, a large 2% tornado risk is in place. I could also see there being a 5% tornado risk in a future outlook. I do anticipate that this will be another favorable corridor for a few tornadoes if we have discrete supercells. That is a big if. But if any storms are discrete, there will likely at least be a few tornadoes in this region. So once again, Monday also has a chance of a live stream, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live. And then as we go into Tuesday, the threat of severe weather will continue from Chicago and also back over near Milwaukee all the way through Montana, where more isolated to scattered severe weather will be a possibility. I do think in a future outlook, we'll probably see a slight risk of severe weather introduced for at least parts of Iowa and eastern Nebraska, but generally speaking, large hail and damaging winds will be the main concerns. But we could also see an isolated tornado or two. Now let's talk more about the timing of severe weather, beginning with today across the northern plains, which we are expecting a few storms to fire off around 12 to 2 o'clock in northern Minnesota, with large hail and damaging winds being a concern. Perhaps an isolated tornado risk that'll quickly cluster together, and will be really out of Minnesota by 4 o'clock. Really, the main severe weather event will ramp up around 5 to 7 across central Minnesota, even back over into South Dakota, where multiple storms will fire up and kind of cluster together really quickly with large hail, damaging winds, and perhaps a few tornadoes being a possibility between Duth all the way back over into southern South Dakota. By 8 to 9 o'clock, these storms will continue, and we may even see some training storms which could lead to an elevated flooding risk. And then by 11 to 12 o'clock, we're going to see some storms cluster together and eventually move towards the Twin Cities, where significant damaging winds between 60 to 75 miles per hour. A little bit of large hail and perhaps a brief tornado will be a possibility before that falls apart and eventually moves into Wisconsin, and eventually towards northern Illinois. Now on Monday could honestly be a big day. I think Monday has the potential to be one of the most significant severe weather events that we've had all month long, and I even think there is a non-zero chance for a dew on Monday, so let's talk more about this. By around 1 to 2 o'clock on Monday, the HR is hinting that a line of thunderstorms will develop back over North Dakota. Now this right here would be the area that we're basically watching for a potential dew. Essentially this would be the beginning of a line of thunderstorms that would extend from North Dakota, perhaps even as far east as the Twin Cities in Minnesota. So by around 3 to 4 o'clock that continues to track to the east. By 5 to 6 o'clock we got supercells that'll be trying to go up as well back over in central and southern Minnesota. But really, the corridor where the most favorable risk of tornadoes is going to exist will be in this area here, southwest Minnesota, southeast South Dakota, and northwestern Iowa, where extremely high amounts of wind shear will be in place in a very localized environment, and this could lead to an elevated tornado risk if storms were to fire in that environment. As of now, it does not appear as if we have much of a chance of that happening, but I do think we are going to see multiple segments of storms develop here across areas like Minnesota and South Dakota, which could lead to significant damaging winds between 60, perhaps even 75-80 miles per hour, some large hail, and perhaps even a couple of tornadoes embedded in these lines of thunderstorms. And this would continue into the overnight hours moving into Wisconsin, most likely producing at least some level of damaging winds heading in the direction of Wausau and even towards Milwaukee, so definitely something that we need to monitor very closely. And I'll tell you what guys, obviously things can change with the forecast, and things could definitely change here where it's not nearly as significant as what it appears as if on this future radar run. However, if this continues to trend in this direction, we will likely have a video tomorrow and will almost undoubtedly be live for something like this, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live, and also if and when we have a video if we have one tomorrow. If we don't have a video tomorrow, you can basically assume that the risk of significant severe weather in this area is likely not nearly as high as what is displayed here, but definitely something that we are keeping an extremely close eye on. Now further down to the south on Tuesday, we are expecting a little bit more severe weather across areas like Iowa, perhaps as far east as Chicago, but mostly on Tuesday. We are just talking about a couple of clusters of storms that are going to fire off. One in Nebraska, which is in the high plains, and then one back over in Iowa, where damaging winds, large hail, localized flooding, and perhaps an isolated tornado or two will be a possibility. Generally speaking though, Tuesday doesn't look to be a huge day when it comes to significant severe weather. I think more than anything, flooding is going to be more of a concern out of this event. But nonetheless, be staying weather aware in these areas. After Tuesday, I think the severe weather risk definitely gets a lot lower for the majority of the United States. Speaking about beyond Tuesday, this is what it looks like on the GFS model as we go into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. High pressure will be building at the surface level back over in the northern plains and the Midwest. This is going to limit our severe weather for the remainder of July. So basically beyond Tuesday, things get a lot quieter across the Midwest and the northern plains and even into early August. That high pressure system will continue to dominate up there. Really, our next chance for any organized severe weather events probably would not come until next week. So, not really this week, but we're talking about the following week around August 5th or 6th, perhaps back over in the Midwest or the northern plains, but at least for right now, things look to be on the quieter side of things after Tuesday of this week. And, as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. There is a chance of a live stream later today, perhaps even tomorrow. So click the bell icon so you're notified with the latest updates. Also, huge shout out to Jack's Premium Pet Treats for sponsoring today's forecast, and a huge shout out to them for making my cat super happy with the treats they gave. If you want to check them out, it is the top link in the description below, or use code VELOCITY for 20% off at checkout. If you click that link, you'll also automatically get that discount. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys all again in the next video or live.